shame. Motherfucking deadlines will take me to my grave. I've got it so bad. Everybody hear the news. I got them tribulations, translation tribulation blues. Oh yeah.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the presentation on memoQ LiveDocs and some of the things that we can do with it that you may or may not have been aware of. A lot of people ask, what good is it? And usually the answer that they hear doesn't even begin to cover the possibilities. So today I wanted to take a new look at an old reference toolkit as I think about it and see if maybe I can open up your eyes to a couple of possibilities for other things that you might be able to do with it if you're a current user, or if you've never made much use of it, show you some of the good things that can be accomplished with LiveDocs. Okay, there's four basic areas that we're going to cover, but not in the order that I've listed here. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions that people have about LiveDocs, some of the important things that often get left out when people teach about LiveDocs. You're going to get exposed to the different features, both in the formal lecture part and in the live demonstration afterward. But I think one of the other things that's important to understand about LiveDocs, and that I have actually never seen explained as a particular category, is how LiveDocs integrates with other parts of memoQ, because it actually ties in more places than a lot of people realize. We're going to talk also about possibilities for managing your translation references, bilingual sources of all kinds, monolingual references like product literature from a customer, and also what Kilgray, or now memoQ Technologies, calls binaries, which are actually just ordinary computer files in their original format. So a PDF stored as a PDF would be a PDF binary in their particular jargon, or a CAD drawing stored in the original DXF format would be a binary. A video would be a binary, a music file, and so forth. We're also going to expose you to a few ideas about how to do TMs better, or simply replace them if you want. There's also some other possibilities that I'll mention tying in with predictive typing. We're going to talk also a little bit about how to manage your LiveDocs corpora better. The collection of documents is called a corpus, and that's what a collection in LiveDocs is called as well. One of the things that is often neglected is talking about how to optimize the settings for the use of a LiveDocs corpus. And so we're going to explore that a little bit because that's very important. And if you get a grip on that, you'll be able to do a lot more with your reference information. And we're also going to look at some of the possibilities for bringing data into LiveDocs and for exporting it from LiveDocs for different purposes. There are actually more possibilities for that than most people are aware of, and some of them might be particularly useful to you. Okay. Unfortunately, the current state of things for teaching about this feature of memoQ is that it's usually not explained at all, hardly. or explained very badly, or certainly very incompletely. If you look on YouTube, and on the right-hand side of this slide, you can see a screenshot of the only 4 videos that I saw from memoQ. There's a really good talk, which is the link at the top, that Balázs Kiss, one of the founders, gave last year, that covered some interesting aspects, including a couple that I don't think about much, but I probably need to. And then there's a series of short videos, less than 2 minutes, a little bit over 8 minutes for part of the memoQ training, and then 2.5 minutes. And that's it. That's all that's offered by memoQ Technologies to teach you about LiveDocs in video format that I was able to find on YouTube. I've got some more videos that I've produced myself, and there's a few other things. There's really not very much out there, and most of what's out there talks about alignment. It's always alignment, alignment, alignment. That's 90% of what you hear about LiveDocs. But for me, the alignment is maybe 5% of the value, if that. There are so many other useful things that you can do with it. One good example of how somebody uses LiveDocs that might be useful to read is a user experience report published on the memoQ website. It's an interview with Susan Starling, a financial translator, is also a friend of mine. And I've got the link here. I'll make the PDF available for download off of my blog later, so you can get a copy of all of the slides and have those links. And it's kind of interesting to read how she applies LiveDocs in particular to her financial translation work. And in her words, more or less, she can't imagine doing that kind of work anymore without the superior reference access that memoQ LiveDocs gives her. The memoQ help has a pretty good overview of features or formats supported by LiveDocs, but it doesn't have a lot of detail. And one of the problems, of course, when you go to help to find out information about a particular feature of any software, is that it doesn't really cover much of the scope of real-world applications. So yeah, you can find out that you can store PDF files, for example, but the different ways that you can store them, or how you might want to store it for one use case versus another, are not discussed in something like a help file. So where do you go? Okay, my blog has some information on that. I've got a link to the keyword for LiveDocs on my blog that can show you some of the articles I've written over the last 9 years covering it. But even those don't cover the full scope of what you can do with this particular reference toolkit. Okay, I think it's useful to understand how LiveDocs ties into other parts of memoQ. And most of the time, when you hear a little more intelligent discussion of LiveDocs that goes beyond alignment, people talk about how it's useful in the translation grid, where we do all of our translation and editing, and how a bilingual document that is stored in LiveDocs, or a document period, you can store monolingual documents as well, how that will show up, for example, in the translation results at the right side of the screen, just like information that's stored in a translation memory, for example. And that's very useful. Also, when you do concordance searches, you can find the information stored in LiveDocs. One important difference, though, when you have a hit from a LiveDocs corpus when in a concordance search, is that unlike with a translation memory, you can access the full document context. What that means is, if you see a hit and you look at the source language and you look at the target language, and the translation doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, or you need a little bit more information to understand just how you should be using that particular word or phrase in your translation. If it's a TM hit, well, you're kind of out of luck. That's all the context you're going to get. But with a LiveDocs corpus, you can right-click on the hit, and there will be a little command that says Open Document. And when you do that, it opens up another tab in your working display that will show you the full bilingual document context. So you can go and read a paragraph, a couple pages worth of information in your source language and your target language, and get a better understanding of how that term is used, or just get a better overview of the subject. I love it for reference purposes. And in fact, this is one of the important uses for me, storing monolingual information in both the source language and the target language. For example, in the target language, to show the authentic use of English, in my case, that's my target language, for a particular subject domain, maybe in a scientific domain that's similar to my personal specialty, chemistry, but it's a little bit different, where phrases or where terms might be used a little bit differently. So I might go and create a collection of research publications, for example, in that field, and then search in the target language, and I can open up the full document context then, and do reading and help educate myself in that area, so that when I do a translation, I express myself in a more natural way, like a scientist in that particular domain would do in English. And in the translation and editing grid, like say you have hits that show up like a TM, you could concordance, you get the LSC hits, which is where the index is mined for possible matches based on frequent occurrence of subsegments. Also, if you use the Muses feature, which is like STL auto suggest, and you can actually train your predictive typing to use a particular set of documents or a particular corpus or group of corpora. That's very, very good feature. And in fact, that YouTube talk by Balash Kish, the 45-minute one, talks quite a lot about the use of LiveDocs in training Muses for predictive typing. So if that's an area that interests you, I recommend that you go to YouTube and find that video and watch it. It's really interesting. I learned a lot from looking at that while I was preparing this talk. Another area of memoQ that LiveDocs integrates with is the terminology extraction module. And we're going to see an example of that later. And there you can use a collection of documents, both monolingual and bilingual, to look for terminology. And you can do this in a couple of different ways. You can, when you do the term extraction, you can select LiveDocs corpora to do the term extraction in. So you can mine a corpus, for example, of all of your clients' product literature in the source language. Okay, term extractions are done on the source language. You can also, when you're in the term extraction, see any occurrences of the statistical terminology that's found, the frequent terms that are found according to the criteria that you set for your term extraction. Any of those that occur in LiveDocs corpora that are attached to the project will show the occurrences in the occurrences pane at the lower left-hand side of the working window for term extraction. Also, this is something that a lot of people forget or are perhaps unaware of. When you're doing terminology extraction and you want to see how a particular phrase or individual term is used in your other references, translation memories or LiveDocs corpora, for example. You can do concordance searches by selecting the term and using your keyboard shortcut for the concordance and open that up. Now, that's the same information that you'll find in the occurrences window, but that's a little bit more efficient way of accessing that information. You don't have to scroll through a long list, and that's kind of helpful. And LiveDocs is also useful as a reference library. As I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, I can store videos in LiveDocs. I can store audio files. I can store graphics and use these as reference. So for example, if I'm translating a patent, somebody might send me a bunch of TIFF files or other graphic formats that contain the reference drawings for the patent. And so I can go to my LiveDocs corpus, find the particular drawing that I'm looking for in the list, double click on it, and it will open up. Might open up in Microsoft Paint or in some other external program. So it's not those some of those files, the graphics formats and the sound formats, video and so forth, they're not indexed and searchable per se, but they are accessible in that you can find them and open them up in external programs. Another area that I think is very important where LiveDocs is integrated in memoQ is for project setup in project templates. Now, project templates are something that some of us old timers don't usually use very much, mostly because we've been so busy working that a lot of us haven't had time to explore the possibilities, but it's actually a pretty powerful feature. And as I've come to use it more in the last couple of years, I've really come to appreciate it. It takes some time and some thought to set up a good template, but I just spent a little bit of time, thought about the needs of particular types of projects that I was doing and created some of my own templates. And one of the very useful things about doing that is that unlike the old familiar project wizard that has been part of memoQ since its beginnings about 11 years ago, more than 11 years ago, is that with the project templates, you can include a LiveDocs corpus. If you use the project wizard to set up your projects, you have to go in after the project is created and attach whatever existing LiveDocs corpora you want in that project to the project, or create a new project-specific or customer-specific corpus if you don't already have one. And the nice thing about the project templates is that it does all of this for you automatically. Saves time, and in my case, it avoids forgetfulness, because I've got a lot of different reference documents that I like to have regular access to, for example, in my patent work. But very often I'll be about a third of the way through the job maybe, and I'll go to search for something in the concordance and I won't see it. I know I've got that. Why isn't it showing up? It's not showing up because I forgot to attach the LiveDocs corpus. Whoops. So by using the templates, for example, I can make sure that my master TM is always attached, but also that my important LiveDocs corpora are automatically attached. And in a lot of these templates that get set up, you can do it so that any LiveDocs corpus that has the name of this client or that fits the particular subject area or domain for the new project that's being set up with a template will automatically have subject-specific, client-specific, domain-specific corpora, LiveDocs corpora attached to that project. So you don't have to remember that. And I found that since I've started doing my projects using the templates, important LiveDocs corpora and other resources that I need, like special segmentation rules and other things, they're already attached to my project. And I don't have to stop partway through and go look for the things and then manually attach them. It's a really nice feature. I hope that at some point they'll include the LiveDocs incorporation in the regular project wizard, but in the meantime, it's there in the templates, and it's one of those things maybe to motivate you to learn about memoQ templates for setting up your projects. Okay, let's have a quick look at how data gets into LiveDocs and what data gets into LiveDocs and how it goes out of LiveDocs and in what form and whither. Where can it go? I've got a little graphic here that I made and put in the middle of this slide that has particular areas marked with blue boxes and red boxes. The red boxes are the commands in this ribbon that have to do with bringing data in, some kind of an import for one purpose or another, and the blue boxes are for sending data out of LiveDocs to something else or somewhere else. And yeah, what is all of this? Well, the incoming data might be monolingual texts of any kind. It can be a copy of the original file that you're translating from PowerPoint or Excel or whatever format you're using. It could be reference information. It can be bi-text, bilingual texts of many different kinds. That might be an SDL-XLIF file, for example, that a colleague or a client translated using SDL Trados Studio. You can bring those in and store them as reference documents and have them function immediately as a TM. So you don't even need to import that into a translation memory. You just import the relevant SDL-XLIF file and it's there in LiveDocs. I use this feature, for example, a lot if I need to do revision work on somebody's translation. I take the bilingual file that's coming out of WordFast or SDL Trados or whatever. I throw it into LiveDocs, and then I take the original file and I bring it in as a translation document, and then I go through and use the LiveDocs corpus with whatever settings I've got for my purpose to translate each line as I go through, and then I look at it and say, okay, do I want to edit that, or how am I going to change it, or am I going to simply accept it, confirm? So I find that very useful for editing workflows. Yeah, another thing you can, another type of data you can send in would be translations from your translation. And you can do that at any stage of the translation. So basically you can save a snapshot of your translation at some stage and go back to it later. There's other ways to do that using other features, but for some people, this may be particularly useful, and especially if you want to share this with somebody who's not using memoQ, that might be a helpful thing to do. Another thing to be aware of when importing data, let's look at this graphic here for a second. If you look at about the middle of that picture where it says new context, new content, I've got two boxes adjacent to each other, two red boxes. One says import document, so bringing in an individual SDL-XLIF file or an individual PDF, I would click import document in the new content section to bring that in. But notice right next to that, it says import folder structure. And if I choose that, I can bring in a whole slew of documents all at once. So if somebody gives me a folder with 20 or 30 or 1,000 reference documents to use, I can bring them all in one shot by using that import folder structure command. Now, for some people, this might have a particular significance that it might not have for others. A good example of this might be somebody who used Omega T for a long time. And Omega T users will know or remember that all of their past work is stored as TMX files. Each individual translated file is stored as a TMX file with the source language and the target language. There is no TM per se. You have folders that are full of TMX files. So if you've been translating for a couple of years with Omega T, you've got a folder or some folders with, depending on what your workload is, dozens, you don't do much work, hundreds, or maybe even thousands of translated files in TMX format. And if you migrate to some other tool later, WordFast or SDL Trados or memoQ, to bring all of your past information with you, you have to import all those individual TMX files. Now, if you're using SDL Trados Studio, for example, that's a no-brainer. You just create a new TM, you go into the folder where all your TMX files from your old days with Omega T are stored, and you just select all the files and boom, import them in one shot. Unfortunately, not with memoQ. This is a weakness of the TM import feature in memoQ. I've been complaining about it for maybe 10 years now, and so far nothing has been done about that. And I've seen cases specifically of Omega T users who've migrated to memoQ, who spend hours or days importing their TMX files from their old work, and they lose track. And it's a nightmare. I actually helped somebody do that for a couple of hours and gave up in despair and threw it all into Trados and then exported a single TMX from Trados and brought it into memoQ TM. That was actually kind of stupid of me because I forgot that I could have imported an entire folder structure and saved hours and hours and hours of work. And so you can get around the memoQ limitations of a single TMX or other file at a time to import to a TM by using LiveDocs and importing whole folders with all the TMX files that you want, or all the SDL XLIF files that somebody has given you. You don't have to import them one at a time to a bloody TM. So LiveDocs, in that sense, is the better TM, except that it also gives you the context, which is even nicer. Okay, now, and the other red boxes that I have marked here. Under live alignment, there's alignment pairs. We'll see alignment a little bit later. And you also have on the far right-hand side something called import. You're not going to use that most of the time because the documents that they're talking about there are LiveDocs documents. Unfortunately, the menu ribbon doesn't tell you that, but it is. Okay, that's an MQXLZ format, but it's not the same as the regular memoQ bilingual with the same file extension, and we'll talk a little bit about that and some of its implications later. But if somebody exports a document from a memoQ LiveDocs corpus and you want to bring that in to your own, that is when you would use that red box on the right-hand side of that graphic. Now, for data going out, what can we do here? Well, the first blue box going from the left under LiveDocs export. What is that? That will export the contents of your corpus in an MQXLZ format. Now that contains XLIF data, and you can get at it. Usually open up the archive. It's just a zip file. But anyway, that's exporting the corpus as XLIF. And then if we go all the way to the right-hand side of the graphic, that blue box that's next to the red import box, that's for doing that with an individual document that is saved in LiveDocs. So on the left-hand side, you can export the entire corpus in a zip file, which contains the individual XLIFs of the documents. Or on the right-hand side, you can choose a single document, or by using the control key and clicking on several different files, or using shift-click to select a range of them in your list, you can export the individual documents as an XLIF format. You can also, somewhat less usefully, export the contents of a LiveDocs document to a TM. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, there's a couple of reasons, one of which I hope will go away in the future. But indexing in memoQ is not the same for every module. The index for the TM is a little bit more efficient, it's faster than it is for LiveDocs. You don't notice this with small corpora or with smaller documents, but if you begin to store things like the EU DGT data with something like 2 million segments and God knows how many words, if you have all that in a LiveDocs corpus, which I do, and I use that way sometimes because I like to read full document context of those EU translations if I use them for reference. But if I'm going to do pre-translation, I disconnect that beforehand, because otherwise I might have, I don't know, a 50 sentence translation to do. I start a pre-translation that has an enormous corpus attached to it with 2 million segments from the EU DGT. And I can probably go on vacation before that pre-translation will be done. Same data sitting in a TM will finish that pre-translation in, I don't know, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, not very long, much faster. But you only notice this problem when you have very large corpora. This is an area that I hope that memoQ Technologies will address soon. I've been bringing it up for years, but for smaller collections of data, this is irrelevant. You don't really notice the difference, or an extra minute isn't going to be the difference that makes or breaks you. But anyway, so you would export to a TM maybe because you want that data to translate a little faster if you're doing a pre-translation. You might also export it to a TM so you can export it to TMX. Now, it would be nice if we could export directly from LiveDocs to TMX. It would facilitate sharing with others, but we can export to XLIF. So anybody can import XLIF and then feed that to their TM. So that's not really a deal breaker, but it would be convenient to be able to do that. And what other reason would you want to export to a TM? Well, none really. Speed and sharing. And then the second we already talked about that other export. So that's the import and export. There's another thing which I'm going to show you in the live demo segment, where I'll show you how you can use LiveDocs to do something kind of like the memoQ translate feature. If you stored an old translation in LiveDocs and you delete the project, you lose the project or whatever. So you're no longer able to use the translate feature when a new version comes up and you want to do a document-based translation in order to leverage the old information in the best way and not get unwanted interference from other content in a translation memory, for example. You can take those documents that are stored in a LiveDocs corpus and export them and then bring them back in as translation documents. But there's a trick to it. it won't work unless you know this special trick, which I've described on my blog. I think I might have a YouTube video on that, but you're going to see it live today for your convenience.
Super.
Okay, one of the important things to master, or most people really use LiveDocs without knowing any of the stuff I'm going to talk about right now. But trust me, your experience with LiveDocs will be so much better, and you'll be able to do so many more useful things if you are at least aware of these possibilities and know when to resort to them. If you look in the memoQ resource console, you will see a particular group of settings called LiveDocs settings. They're highlighted here with a red oval with a yellow fill. And here in this example of the screenshot, I've got 4 different settings that can be used with LiveDocs corpora. There's the default that comes with memoQ. And then I've got 3 others, one specifically for a client. And then I've got 2 different working corpus configurations that I like to use. And these are customized for my own particular way of working. Okay, you would have other settings for your working corpora, I assume. So the place to go and create these settings files, one of the places you can do it, is here in the resource console. Now, the one that gets used by default in your project is found under the settings on Project Home. And there, for example, I've got working corpus Roman numeral 2 selected. This is the default settings that will be used with the LiveDocs corpora that are attached to this particular project. Now, if you want to change the default, you would do that in the memoQ options. The memoQ options, which is the little gear wheel icon in the small toolbar at the upper left of your screen. memoQ options allow you to set defaults for a lot of different things, including LiveDocs corpora. And there you'll find a little icon, which looks exactly like the icon that has the big red arrow pointing to it here. And if you choose a particular corpus there, then that will be the default corpus for all new projects. However, once you're in project, if you want to make changes, this is where you do it under settings with that little puzzle piece icon with the blue piece. It kind of looks like the one on the left, which is for PMs, but has different colors. And we'll have a little closer look at those in just a minute. The other place that you will find settings for LiveDocs is in the LiveDocs area of Project Home. And when you are in that particular area, the ribbon that's displayed is the LiveDocs ribbon. And you see a red arrow here in this screenshot that's pointing to settings. Okay, it's referring to the same settings file. It's just a different way to access it. And here, the difference is it will show you settings for a particular selected corpus or multiple selected corpora. So I could, for example, use the control key, click on the selected corpus here, and then click on another one so that 2 are selected. And when I go to the settings, then whatever I do there will apply to both of those files. In this particular case, the linguarium corpus is using the settings created specifically for that corpus, the linguarium settings. Now, if we go back to the previous slide for just a second, we will see that the default for everything else is working corpus 2. So I went in specifically and changed the settings for that one corpus. Well, why would I want to do that? Well, you'll understand that when we take a little careful look at the details of what you can do with those settings. Okay, another aspect that is important for getting the most out of LiveDocs, or that may become important in the future, is the use of keywords. And keywords will tie into the settings when we start to look at those. And the keywords are just any words or phrases that you choose to assign to a document stored in LiveDocs. And here you see a screenshot where I have selected the Nolte corpus. That's a corpus that I've been maintaining for a number of years for a friend in Germany who has a couple of companies. One of them is for freight forwarding. And here I've got a lot of different documents stored. And for some of these documents, I have keywords like press release. And so if I'm doing a translation of a press release for him in the future, there might be particular phraseology that I want to be preferred, so that if there's a 100% hit coming from the TM and from this LiveDocs corpus, I want to make sure that I want to make sure that maybe the hit with the press release as the keyword is given preference over another hit from a different corpus that does not carry the press release keyword. So anyway, this is what the keywords look like in the LiveDocs view when you're looking at the list of LiveDocs documents. Now you'll see keywords in other contexts as well. Here we're looking at a specific document that's stored in LiveDocs. This is an alignment of an old translation. You can tell if you know memoQ alignment features. You see the little lines going between the left and the right-hand side. These were all automatic alignments because they're green. Confirmed alignments are blue, but I'm lazy. I don't usually confirm them. And here, up at the top of that screenshot, you also see keywords listed. In this case, it's Mundi and web, because this was from a website translation. And I wanted to use that to influence the matching in future website translations that I might do for this particular client. Now let's look at keywords in another context. Yes. Here, if you're in the translations list, the list of documents that are being translated, you have the ability to select a document or a group of documents and add them to a LiveDocs corpus. And here in the screenshot, you see the dialog where that's done. And I have several corpora attached to this particular project, so it allows me to select which corpus these documents are going to be added to. If I want to add it to several different corpuses, I have to do this process a couple times and choose a different corpus each time. Okay, it's got the username, Rumpelstiltskin in this case, and then some keywords that I've added: contract, Bayer, the German pharmaceutical company, and pharmaceutical, which is just a keyword to indicate the area. And you can also, when you save a translation document in LiveDocs, it can be saved with the preview. So you see not only the bilingual context, but you also see the layout. In this case, it would be of the target translation. If you're saving previews for a monolingual document, of course, you would see the source language or the target language, whichever the document corresponds to. Okay, so these are three different contexts in which we see and add keywords. Now, what do we do with this? Okay, again, the settings of LiveDocs are very powerful and very useful. And if you want to get the most out of this particular module, it really pays to spend some time looking at these settings, reading about them, experimenting, and you will be able to leverage the information in your corpora much better. Most people don't do this, okay? So it's not like if you don't learn this stuff, you can't use LiveDocs. No. You can get a lot of value out of LiveDocs without understanding the things I'm talking about now at all. But if you spend a little time on the parts that are relevant to you or may become relevant to you, that investment will pay off big. Okay, I've got in this screenshot, in this slide, I've got a screenshot of both tabs in the corpus settings dialog. On the left is the first tab, and I've filled in some examples of things you can do with that. Under match thresholds, you can adjust the thresholds for what is counted as a match and will be used, for example, in pre-translation by editing the value in the first box. In this case, it's set to 70. I don't believe that's the default. I think the default is something like 60. So I raised the match threshold a little bit more. And I also changed the definition of good match. What's good? Well, I think in the default, it's defined as 95%, which would basically mean 100%, except maybe the formatting is a little bit different. There's some tags or a number's different or some very small thing. But for me, good is more like a high fuzzy. So I set my good criterion at 80 for this particular corpus settings file. And then there's a couple of different, there's actually several different kinds of penalties that you can apply to a corpus. Let's say that a client has sent me his TM. I've stored it in LiveDocs, and it's got user information in there, or I'm using a LiveDocs corpus that's been supplied by another memoQ user, or maybe a translation agency that uses memoQ. And there's information from a lot of different users in there. And frankly, some of it sucks. There are a couple of the users who aren't very good translators. Their information can't be trusted. Or maybe they're a good translator, but the information is from like 20 years ago, and the language in this subject domain has changed. So all the work that Johan did 15 years ago might have been good work then, but I need to look a little more carefully at the 100% matches to see if language needs updating. Okay, so I can go and put in specific usernames that will be found in this LiveDocs corpus associated with the data and apply appropriate penalties. So Donnie Dumbo, he makes a lot of mistakes. So 100% match from him is immediately knocked down to 90% because I need to take a careful look at it before I use his content. And Linda Lackadaisical is less incompetent, so I penalized her stuff a little bit less. So if there's 100% match coming from both of these people, hers is going to be penalized less than his. And then the same thing with corpora. If, for example, I've got a corpus where I put junky client translation memories, you know, those what I call whorehouse TMs, where basically everybody contributes their little bit of disease to the language. And I don't really trust those things. And I want to make sure that 100% match is, it's going to still qualify as a good match, you know, but it's going to be penalized. So it won't be 100%. In this particular case, because I'm using a 15% penalty, it'll be 85%. And I stop and take a look at it. It won't just pre-translate and confirm if that's my pre-translation settings. And then if there's another corpus that has stuff that is maybe from a slightly different scientific field, so it might be 100% match in the source language, but in the target language, the language might need to be changed to reflect the way that specialists in that field write. So that one I'm putting a small penalty on. So it'll still show up fairly high in the match rankings, but I'm still going to have to take an extra look at it. And then there's different penalties for alignment that you might want to adjust depending on how you work. The ability to adjust fuzzy matches to deal with the tags and things like that. On the second tab of this dialog, there's more penalties, okay? And you can also use the keywords here. So for example, if I'm doing a translation of a contract and there are a bunch of matches coming out of the LiveDocs corpus, but not all those matches are from contracts, and there are some matches from contracts. I want those matches with contracts with the contract keyword to be preferred. So here in the screenshot on the right, any document that is stored in a LiveDocs corpus that is not associated with the keyword contract is automatically going to have its match penalized by 5%. So an 85% match, which comes from a document that is not tagged as a contract, will be not an 85% match, it'll be an 80% match. Or I can change that and use a higher penalty if I want to do that. Yeah, I can use a penalty of 100%, which makes sure that something never shows up in the translation results, for example, but I can still concordance it. I can still find it in the concordance, okay, because the concordance is not based on matching. So you can use these keyword features or any of these penalty features to completely exclude content from matching related processes like pre-translation or displaying the translation results or whatever, but you still have access to that content when you do a concordance search. And lastly, down at the bottom of the screenshot on the right, language changes, okay? And so I have adjusted the settings here so that any hits coming from documents or segments that have modification dates prior to January 1st, 2010 are given a 5% penalty. This is again my way of making myself check older material where the language in use in that special domain may have changed and make sure that it's really still relevant. Okay, protecting myself against IT language from 20 years ago, for example. Okay, now we're going to go over to the live demonstration part of this. And so I'm going to end the slideshow and we're just going to go into memoQ and have a quick look at some things. Let me see, I got to close a few windows. Doing a number of different things. Resource console. Okay, so we're going to launch memoQ again. I'm using memoQ version 8.7, but the things we're talking about today apply to everything from the last 9 years, more or less. Okay, and we're going to begin at the beginning. So I'm going to create a new project, and I'm going to do it from a template, since we were talking about using LiveDocs with templates. Okay, and in the project templates, you can start off with a document if you want. So I will do that in this case. You don't have to. You can add them later. You just click next at this point if you wanted to. But kind of neat to see what happens when you use the documents. And let's see, what do we have for, here's a document in German. We use it as a translation source. Now, notice I didn't say anything about languages yet. I just chose to start a translation project with a template. Okay, so there's the document that I'm going to add. And I could also add a whole folder structure. So if there's a folder full of documents I'm translating, I could do that as well using this other command at the bottom of the dialog. Okay, now we simply click Next. Detecting languages. Oh, this is that NLP feature of memoQ that is used to automatically identify the language. And I noticed, okay, this is German. Okay, but do I want generic German or do I want German from Germany, for example? Okay, let's make it German from Germany. Sure. Okay, and who is the client? Firefighters is our client today. And my target language, English. Ooh, I'm going to change that. Okay, that will be English United States. I'm American. And so I want that specifically. Whoops. I select that, and then I have to click Add Selected. I forgot that last time, which is why there was no change. Okay, and I don't want generic English, which is what I've got, so I'm going to remove that. So now the displayed target language will be English for the United States. And here I have a list of different project templates that I've made for different purposes. And this particular project template is my own personal setup that I've created for doing German to English projects. And I set it up to be generic, but you'll notice I was able to change the source and the target languages to use a specific variant. Okay, let's see, we've got the name of the client, we've got the subject, which will be fire safety. And I'm just going to leave domain blank. All right, anything else I want to do? I could just click finish at this point. If I want to look at other settings that go along with this template, I can do that. And here it shows the heavy resources that I'm going to use. Now you'll notice when the heavy resources are displayed, under term basis, for example, you'll see on the right-hand side, if you can see this on your screens, number 1, KSL master, and number 2, KSL IP. I do a lot of patent work, a lot of intellectual property work in general, actually. And so most of the time when I'm using this template, I'm going to be doing some kind of a patent or patent litigation project or something with trademarks. So I want those two term bases automatically attached so I don't forget them. Okay, this is the not forget feature of templates that I mentioned earlier. It's very useful. And you can also use other resources. You can attach all sorts of things like non-translatables lists and so forth that you might want to use regularly and not forget them. This is an extremely helpful to me and has saved a lot of personal annoyance when I set up memoQ projects, because the stuff I always had to attach manually is done automatically now. Okay, so we'll close that and we're just going to click finish. Okay, and oh yes, I also have this template set up to do a little pre-translating, so I don't have to remember to tell it to pre-translate. And let's close that. Okay, so here is the file. Let's go have a quick look at the document. It pre-translated one segment, so there wasn't much in the way of matches there. And let's have a look and see what things were attached. Under translation memories, my working translation memory is a special one that was created by the template for this project. This is a project-specific translation memory. And the master TM, where everything will get written when I finish the project later, is my file, is my TM KSL master, which has all my work from the last 19 years. You could make this the client-specific master TM if you wanted, and set that up in that way in your template. This was done automatically. Okay, term bases. What do we have there? Okay, we have the 2 term bases that I told it to include, and we have a new empty, see down below, entries 0. This is a project-specific term base. So terminology that I write here will go into the term base ranked number 1, and it will have the highest matching priority. And notice in the QA column for the term bases that only the project-specific term base is marked for QA. So the others will be used for getting translation results, assembly, whatever, but they will not be used for QA unless I specifically select them. And those term bases have a lot of junk, a lot of synonyms and things like that. So it's better to have it this way. And I set that up in project template, which is very helpful. And because this is a talk about LiveDocs, we look under LiveDocs and what's going there. It has a project-specific LiveDocs corpus. I did not specify any existing corpora to be added automatically, but the next time I start a project that may use some other client name or whatever, or have a different subject domain, it will automatically look, and depending on the settings of my template, automatically attach the LiveDocs corpora that I specify based upon client name and so forth. It will not create a redundant firefighters corpus, for example, if there already is one. So this way, you can always remember to attach the corpora for a specific client if your template is set up that way. So that's very helpful. Now we're going to add a few things and see a little bit about how does this LiveDocs thing work anyway. All right, what should we do? Oh, well, I'll tell you what. There's nothing in this corpus. It's just an empty shell right now. Since everybody likes to talk about, just a minute, LiveDocs corpus. Okay, so everybody likes to talk about alignment in LiveDocs. Boring, but we'll just show it to you real quick. So it's here under Add Alignment Pairs. I'll show you the way that most people are used to doing these things. Here's the dialog, and we will add a source document or multiple source documents. Let's see, that would be to align. It's in there. Okay, contract, sure. Source is German, so we'll take this German file. Okay, and now we will add a translation of that. This was some old work, contract in English. Now, you probably can't see this very well because it's blue on blue, but where it says link type, it automatically associated the contract underscore German .docx file with the corresponding one in English. And it does this based upon the file names. So file names that are similar will be automatically linked up to do the alignment. Okay, and I can, in the alignment, to improve the quality of the alignment, I can tell it to consider terminology or maybe fixing the alignment if it gets a little bit off. Okay, and there are some different parameters here that you can set to make that more effective. And I'm just gonna, oh, and I can add some keywords if I wanted to at this stage. Another place to put the keywords in. Okay, when you're beginning the alignment. And I'll just click OK. And it is aligning those two contracts. Okay, and now in the list of documents, you see that. And I could also add the keywords right here. So here I could write contract. Now it says that in the file name, but it doesn't mean it respects it for keywords. So now I've added a keyword. Okay, let's have a quick look at that. We double click on the entry and here's the alignment. Now I could go through this and merge and split segments and make other, I could edit the content here, for example, do a lot of different things. A good part of the existing information out there on LiveDocs goes into detail on alignment. For example, the video that Daniel Zielinski did as part of the memoQ basic training talks a lot about alignment. I think pretty much nothing else for LiveDocs. So if you want to see the features or the details of how to do a better alignment in memoQ, go have a look at that. It's available on YouTube, among other places, or look in the memoQ help. Alignment, you can lecture an hour or so just on that if you want, but here it is. Okay, and that's what it looks like. Now, let's look at alignment a little differently. Okay, add alignment pairs. And here, instead of adding an individual document, I'm going to add a source folder. Click. Which source folder are we going to do? Oh, here, DE for German. Here's the German folder. And there are 4 files in it. Now, okay, yeah, we want all of those, sure. Click OK. Oh, right, it shows me all the different filters here. Check, okay, they're all docx, so it's fine. If you had some particular format here that required a different filter, you could choose that. So click OK, that will do. Okay, and there's my list of source documents. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the target side. Okay, one of my dogs doesn't like my presentation here. Okay, we're going to select the folder with English documents. Ooh, there's only 3 there. Gee, what's it going to do about that? Okay, again, all docx, so we'll just let that go. And let's see how it did. Okay, it matched up financial German with financial English US, right? Okay, and it seems to have, okay, the press release thing has been matched up correctly. This one, ooh, I can't really tell. Is that matched up correctly? Is that the right document? Ooh, I don't know. So I'm going to make that a little bit wider so I can read the file name better. Okay, that's the 01 as opposed to the 03 file. So I'm going to go look here. Whoops, target configuration. Ah, yeah, 01 with 01. Okay, so you had 2 file names. This one ending in T01 and T03 are otherwise the same. And the intelligent file matching feature of LiveDocs alignment automatically meshed. And now, if I want to just let it go, I can click OK. Okay, it will not import the unlinked document. Fine, so we can ignore it. That one doesn't have a translation. Good. And now, the 3 paired document groups are all going to be aligned automatically. Now, one nice thing about LiveDocs, see, here they are. That was fast. Okay, one good thing about LiveDocs is you can do these bulk alignments with one folder full of source documents, one folder full of target documents, or maybe they're not even all matching, okay? And have it automatically do the alignment. And if the alignment needs to be fixed, you know, then the cool thing about LiveDocs is you don't need to fix it right away. In SDL Trato Studio or WordFast or many other programs, to make use of an alignment in your translation, you have to go through and fix it and then send it to a TM. Not here. Right now, if I started translating content in that LiveDocs corpus would be immediately available for translation matching and for concordance lookups. And if I notice that something is mismatched or is not quite right, I can go into the individual document and fix the alignment in that part if I want to. Or I can just read down a segment or two where the actual content is, copy that, and then paste it back in my translation. And in terms of analyzing whether I've got leverage from old translations, whether they are correctly aligned or not, right now, I could use this corpus to see if there is any actual leverage in there before I spend the time fixing the alignment. And that's kind of useful because I had a sad case that I know of, a German client of mine who got a memoQ server years ago, and they were very excited about it. They called me up and asked me if I knew anything about memoQ. And so, well, yeah, a little bit. Turns out they'd actually decided to buy the server because they read my blog and read all the stuff about memoQ and the memoQ server on it. They just didn't know it was written by me because they recommended that I go read my blog too. And they got this wonderful server. They could have done so much with it, but unfortunately, the guy who sold it to them emphasized alignment so much, and they even gave them special training in how to do alignment. So they took their best PM, who was kind of expensive, and they had him do nothing but alignments for like 3 months. And it turned out that there wasn't much leverage in any of it. He was going through each individual document, fixing it. I think he was even aligning, or he was importing one file at a time. So this was taking forever because they did a lot of work. And they never got any value out of it. So, and actually, they never used the server, not even for one single translation project. It was like 20,000 euros wasted. But later, I kind of broke their hearts by telling them that they could have taken all these translations in one folder for German, in a second folder for English or German and French or whatever the combinations were, and done this folder-based automatic alignment that you just saw, pressed a button, walked away, had coffee, spent 10 minutes on the work at most, probably less. And then they would automatically be able to tell whether there is any leverage in a particular document and then go and fix just the documents where they find some leverage. And if there is none, leave it. But they've only spent 10 minutes on it, not 3 months of a valuable employee's time. So LiveDocs in memoQ is the only alignment tool I know that lets you actually be intelligent and efficient with your time and not invest unnecessary time to do unnecessary corrections of alignments that will never be leveraged for anything. And if something is out of sync, you can read the full document context and find the bits that are supposed to be somewhere else and just copy them and use them if you're in a hurry. You don't feel like fixing the alignment. And that's one of the really unique aspects of this particular tool. Okay, so we're going to take a quick look. We don't have a lot of time now, but in the translations, for example, under preparation, if we are doing extraction of terms, okay, here you see all the different things we can choose. If I want to, I can choose LiveDocs corpuses as the source of my material for doing term extraction. Now, if I were in the LiveDocs context where the corpora are displayed, I could go through and select specific documents, for example, and just extract those. So I can do extractions on all corpora attached to a project, a specific corpus, or in specific documents in a particular corpus. I have that flexibility. Okay, and that's covered a little bit in the talk that I gave last year on term extraction. So you can see all the details for how to do that there. Now, the final thing that I'm going to leave you with is I'm going to show you this little trick that I promised about how to recycle an old translation. when you get into maybe a new version of the source document to translate and you've lost the old project. So we will go, for example, into, let's say this one, financial German. Okay, now I get a new version of this German financial document to translate, but that project is gone. But I saved the translation in corpus. And now I want to do document-based pre-translation of the new version, okay, like X-translate. And I want to use this version. Well, how do I do that? First off, I'm going to export. I'm going to select it in the corpus. I'm going to click export. Okay, and where is it going to go? I'm going to put it somewhere where I can find it. Here. And let's see, I will call this old financial doc. Click save. All right, and if I have a look at the folder here it is. It says MQXLZ, which is the file extension usually used for memoQ bilinguals, except that the problem with this, which we'll see in a second. Now we go to the Translations tab, and here we will click Import with Options. Although I think in this case, if you choose regular import, it's going to have a problem. So, but anyway, Import with Options. Now we're looking in here, and okay, here it is. Old financial doc MQXLZ. It seems to have recognized it. Good. Well, not quite. Here, under the document import options, you notice that it says filter is unknown. Now, if you're importing a regular memoQ bilingual with this extension, it will recognize it as a memoQ bilingual. But here, the format's a little bit different. So what do? You lie to it. You go here and you choose the XLIF filter. So we select the XLIF filter. And I think I'm going to leave everything else the same. Record, yeah. Now it's importing that MQXLZ file exported from LiveDocs, which it did not recognize originally. Now let's have a look here. Double click and open it up. There is the bilingual content. None of it is confirmed. So I could, for example, if I want to, select all the segments and confirm them. And now, if I wanted to bring in the new version of this financial document and translate it, I could use the Reimport feature. Okay. And in this case, it's going to have a different name. So when I click Reimport and it tells me, oh, the original source file is still there. It is because I just set this demo up about an hour ago. I'm going to tell it no. And then I will go and find the document somewhere else, the new document that I'm going to translate, which is a new version of that old translation. And then all of the regular features that I have set up for X-translate will be applied, and the pre-translation of the new version of this document will be done based upon the old translation here. Just like X-translate, except that this is in a different project. So you can use that feature in other projects with the help of LiveDocs as a bridge. Okay, so that's all I've got time for today. I hope I've given you a few ideas of what to do for this. This is not the usual LiveDocs presentation, but what I wanted to do was emphasize some things a little bit differently, or get you to think about LiveDocs from some different perspectives, because this is one of the most useful aspects of memoQ for a specialized professional translator. And if you consider some of the aspects that we've talked about today, you will be able to get more out of your reference documents than you thought was possible, and more than you can get out of them with any other translation environment you might work with.